This old concrete wall is all that exists of one of Toledo's old baseball stadiums. Today, we'll talk about how baseball and other things got started in Toledo.
So it's kind of hard to believe sometimes that a place that really melts into the background for us in Toledo used to be the site of really a pretty spectacular stadium as far as stadiums go. So the reason we care about all this is because we care about the rise of the middle class. And the rise of the middle class is what's going to define America when we go into the 20th century. So about that middle class. The middle class is not one thing. It's multi-layered. Okay? So there are lower middle class, middle class, upper middle class, and then upper middle, lower middle. Find out however many places you want to make marks in between the upper class and the lower class. You're going to find 100 different kinds of middle class in there. So when we talk about middle class, we're not necessarily talking about somebody who owns a house with a white picket fence. We could be talking about somebody who lives in an apartment and, walks their dog for fun and plays a little chess in the park or something. Or we could be talking about somebody who lives in Ottawa Hills and has a $400,000 house and, lives a comfortable life where they don't have to worry about how many toppings they're going to get on their pizza. The middle class includes all those people. But what's one of the things that they all have in common? One of the things they have in common, they got a little extra money, they got a little extra time. Okay? They're not living, from paycheck to paycheck in the terms of where's my food and housing going to come from. But they are also not so wealthy where they have no need to worry about anything for the rest of their lives. All of those people fit the middle class. All of them have in common a little bit extra money, a little bit extra time. So, what are they doing with that little bit extra money? We call it disposable income. One of the things that happens at this time that blows people's mind is that people start buying new clothes. Okay? And you go, oh, well, of course they bought new clothes. I have 3 pairs of jeans and, 20 t-shirts in my closet right now and 5 shirts I can wear to school. Well, they bought some new clothes. Well, that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is prior to the 1880s, most people in America would have owned 2 sets of clothes. Okay? For guys, that would mean 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, and then hopefully 2 different jackets. Okay? One was your working clothes that you wore 6 days out of the week. All right? So if you're a farmer, you had a shirt, you had a pair of pants, you wore them all week. All right? Then Saturday was wash day. Saturday the wash got done. Those clothes got washed. Sunday, you put on your other set of clothes called your Sunday clothes, which were your nice pants and your nice shirt, and for the gentleman, probably a jacket, maybe a tie to go to church. For the ladies, you had a house dress that you wore all week, and then you had a Sunday dress that you wore on Sundays. Folks, this is it, okay? People had 2 sets of clothes. You had the clothes you wore all week, Saturday's wash day, Sunday clothes, back at it again on Monday. All of a sudden, with disposable income and the fact that we have an active textile industry and the cost of cloth is coming down and cost of clothing is coming down because now mills have machines, right? There's going to be more machines in mills that are going to make cloth cheaper and the production of clothing cheaper. There's going to be, for the first time, what we call pret-a-porter or ready-to-wear clothing. Clothing that you can buy in a standardized size at a store. Before that, you went to a tailor. The tailor, fit the clothes to you, figured out what size you were, and handmade the clothes. Not anymore. And a lot of times, tailor was probably your wife or your sister, or a husband or uncle that's pretty gifted with scissors and a needle. People start buying new clothes, and that's a big deal. And new clothes are kind of at the heart of new businesses that are going to come about. There's also new stuff. A rolling washer. Before this, you had a washboard. Now you're going to have a washer that has some rollers on it, and you can wash the clothes, and then you're going to run them through this roller system to wring them out and stuff. It's not the washing machine like you and I have, where clothes, Tide Pod, slam it, start it, come back in an hour. Back then you had to wash. You had to work hard to wash. But now there's a machine that helps you do that hard work. Fancier beds. Something you guys take for granted is a box spring under the bed. They did not have box springs under the bed until about the 1880s and 90s. And even then, that was a pretty fancy bed that had a box spring. And a mattress that wasn't just stuffed with horse feathers or something. Cooking stuff. All kinds of new cooking pots and pans. Whereas in the past, you had one cast iron pan and you cooked everything in that stinker. There's other things coming about. Bicycles, a two-wheeled cycle. Those are coming about. The gramophone, the Edison talking gramophone. It's a record player, okay? Those are starting to come about. And people have a little extra money that they can buy this stuff from. Now, where are they getting it? Used to be everybody got stuff from the person in town who did that thing. So there was a tailor who made clothes. There was a cobbler who made shoes. There was a farrier who took care of your horse's needs. There was a blacksmith who did work with iron to make you iron things. There was a carpenter. There was a cooper for baskets. There was there were all of these different people doing all of these different jobs. Okay, and each one of them had a small shop where they did it. In my family, one of my double great grandmothers was a cigar roller. That was her job, and they had a cigar shop. What do you guys sell here? Cigars. What else? Cigars. You don't have soda pop or nothing? We got cigars. That's what they did. She married my double great grandfather, who was a gunsmith. What, they make guns. What else you got? Bows and arrows? Guns. Fix them, sell them. That's it. Okay. Every shop had one thing. Well, here's what changes. You start getting department stores. Okay. Now, you guys live in a blighted era where you don't remember what department stores were necessarily like. But try to imagine if Target was like 2 or 3 stories tall, and inside Target, you had different stuff on different floors. All right. So if you go to the mall, if you've ever gone to like the Dillard's at the mall, at Franklin Park, you know how like there's some stuff upstairs and some stuff downstairs, right? That's the way department stores were. And department stores really come on the scene in the 1880s. They start growing in the 1890s. Toledo had an incredible department store scene. Downtown, you had 3 big ones that they called the 3 L's. Lyon, Lamson, and LaSalle. All 3 of those buildings are still standing. The Lamson building is called One Ohio Center now, and it's over by Huntington Arena. And it's a big building. It's hard for me to describe, but it's over by Huntington Arena. Lion's store was over right across from the Valentine Theater. Where you walk into the Valentine Theater today, there's a 2-story white building that was part of the Lion's store that's right there. And then when I was a kid, when your parents were kids in Toledo, Lion's store existed at the malls. Lion's store was the Dillard's at Franklin Park. Dillard's bought out Lion's store. And if you ever go on the escalator upstairs at at Dillard's, there's 2 gold lions up there. And those gold lions used to stand outside the old Lion's store that was downtown. And then finally there was LaSalle's. And LaSalle's building is still downtown too. And it's apartments. They call it the LaSalle Apartments downtown. It's across from where the Magic Walk is downtown, if you know where that is. It's that building that's about 7 stories tall. Every floor of that building had different stuff on it. So you had clothes on the first floor. Then you had like underwear and nightwear on the second floor. And then like toys and games on the third floor. And beds and bed accessories on the 4th. And kitchen accessories on the 6th. Again, kind of like Target, but split up into floors. All of these places had a restaurant. Again, kind of like Target, except fancier. And so there was a restaurant on the 6th floor at LaSalle's. Lyons had a lunch counter. Lamson's had a lunch counter. And these big stores in the downtown areas of cities, they become the big focal point of the city. So if you go to a place like Chicago, in Chicago it was Sears Roebuck and Company had a big store downtown. Marshall Fields had a big store downtown. JCPenney becomes one of these operators that has big stores at the malls. These big department stores exist in downtown areas. If you guys have ever watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on NBC on Thanksgiving morning while you're getting ready to cook the turkey and whatnot, Macy's was one of these, and still is one of these big department stores in downtown New York. So the department stores become a big thing in the cities. Now, that takes care of people in the cities. What if you lived in Bowling Green? Okay, what if you lived in Napoleon or Bryan or the aptly named Hicksville? Okay, if you lived out in rural Ohio, where'd your stuff come from? You weren't driving in or taking the train in or walking or riding your horse 60 miles from Hicksville to go to LaSalle's in downtown Toledo. So what you did then, when you lived in the country, you did catalog sales. So the big department stores published a catalog a couple times a year. What you're looking at in the background here is the Sears catalog. And the Sears catalog was the most famous of all these catalogs. And you see like a bicycle for sale up here, a talking machine, a gramophone record player down here. You could order this stuff and have it delivered to your house, which you guys think, yeah, like Amazon, and you're exactly right. Just like Amazon. You got the catalog, you filled out a form in the catalog with what you wanted, sent in a check with it, and then several weeks later it would show up at your door. That was the mail order catalog. Now, let me tell you something about the Sears catalog. The Sears catalog was not just famous as a catalog. All right, so we got to get gross here for a second. When you lived out in the country in places like, I always make fun of, like Hicksville, Ohio, when you lived in Hicksville, you didn't always have the chance to get toilet paper all the time. So a lot of times what happened, you wiped yourself, and then you washed your hands, okay? When the Sears catalog started coming around, these things were like 600 to 1,000 pages thick, and they were printed on really flimsy paper. And people realized, I think I know what I can use last year's catalog for. And so the Sears catalog in a lot of rural places became synonymous with toilet paper. You used it as a catalog. When the new catalog comes, you just got yourself 1,000 sheets of scratchy toilet paper. So gross, but I think it's something culturally you ought to know about the importance of the Sears catalog. Disposable time. Disposable time was another new concept. When you lived on a farm, you worked when the sun came up, you were done when the sun went down, and then you prayed and then you slept. And maybe you ate in there a little bit. The idea of having time to yourself is really only an idea that's about 150 years old. Disposable time is a new concept for most people. Now, the rich always had disposable time, right? That's what Southern society was based on, was those 5% that were super rich having all the disposable time in the world. But leisure time for the rest of us was a pretty novel concept. So theaters open up in most towns. Most towns open up a theater or opera house in the 1880s, 1890s. And you'll still see these. If you drive to Pemberville or Grand Rapids or some of those little towns around us, even Rising Sun, they've got a building in town that was their theater. So the people of the town would put on production to entertain each other a couple times a year. But also it gave a place for what they called a traveling company to come through. So sometimes there would be like a Shakespeare traveling company. And these would be actors and actresses that make money by going from town to town, putting on a show and selling tickets and going to the next town. There were also shows that were less lowbrow than Shakespeare that were called vaudeville. And a vaudeville show was not one big play with a plot that takes you for 2 hours. It was more like watching Saturday Night Live or The Masked Singer or something like that, where there were lots of little sketches, songs, dances, comedy routines. It would go on for a couple hours, everybody'd be happy. And the vaudeville troupes were really, really popular at this time. Another thing that was really popular at this time were the brand new amusement parks. So the idea of roller coasters and merry-go-rounds and Ferris wheels, these come about in the 1890s. In Toledo, we had several amusement parks in Toledo. There was one at Walbridge Park near the zoo. And in fact, the zoo was part of Walbridge Park until the 1930s. Another one was up by Point Place near Cullen Park and near Bayview Park. And that was a huge, huge draw. There was a casino at Bayview Park. There were roller coasters there, roller coasters at Cullen. Bayview had a big stadium built in 1919 for the biggest boxing match in American history. And then there was another one even further up in a place called Toledo Beach, up by Monroe, Michigan. And it was basically at the end of the trolley cars. You could take the trolley cars in Toledo all the way to the end of the line, and it would take you to the amusement park. And that's how the trolley car companies made money. Final thing is spectator sports. Spectator sports start becoming a big deal. Talked about boxing a second ago, but also baseball. Baseball becomes a big deal everywhere in America. Every city of any size had a pro baseball team. For us in Toledo, it was, of course, the team that's going to become the Mud Hens. Now, they were known as different things over the years. They were known as the Swamp Angels when they played at a stadium out at that Bayview Park. And in that swamp out there, the Swamp Angels shared the field with a bunch of birds that became known as Mud Hens. And then the team became known as the Mud Hens instead of the Swamp Angels. They also, for a time, were the Glass Sox, which frankly sounds painful. But anyways, the Mud Hens, they played out at Bayview, and then they played at a second stadium that was down, if you know where the federal courthouse is, if you know where the Lucas County courthouse is, you're looking at it right at the center here. And then home plate was right here. Right where the federal courthouse is today is exactly where what was called Armory Park was. And Armory Park was the second home of the Mud Hens. The third home of the Mud Hens was what we started this video with, Swain Field, where the shopping center is today. Not a shopping center that's in great shape today at Detroit and Monroe near I-75. But Swain Field Shopping Center was where the third home of the Mud Hens was. Then they moved out to Maumee and played at the rec center in Maumee for a few decades. And, of course, for your whole lifetime, the Mud Hens have been back downtown at Fifth Third Field. There were also new visions. There were people who had new visions. With this extra time, people got to think about the way the world ought to be. Change is scary, and change was everywhere in the 1880s and 1890s. So some people had alternative visions for what the future could look like, where it wasn't dominated by a few really big corporations and a few really rich people. So they said, what if our country wasn't dominated by industry? Some people split off into what was called the utopian movement. And some of these started back during the Second Great Awakening with some of the splintered churches in the burned over districts in New York. The utopians wanted to create a perfect society. They believed it was possible. Over time, we can make a society or a community that is absolutely perfect. Socialism becomes really popular at this time. Socialism is the idea that the government either owns or regulates most production and most business. And people thought socialism is a way for the community to control businesses rather than businesses to control the community. Social gospel movement called on Christian people to take care of the poor. Social gospel was a really big deal where again, coming out of the Second Great Awakening, people say, I should do good things if I want to earn a place in the afterlife. And then the other big thing that's going to get really, really big really quickly is the rebirth of women's equality movements. Men aren't the only ones involved in the middle class. Women are going into work in what they call pink-collar jobs. Women are becoming school teachers at these one-room schoolhouses and these new city schools that are being established all over in the cities. Women are working as clerks in stores. They're working as secretaries in the big businesses. Women are really joining the workforce, and they're joining the middle-class workforce. And they're going to start demanding, hey, if I'm working and I'm making money and I'm paying taxes, how come I don't have a say in the way the government is run? So this is going to be a really big thing as we move out of Unit 6 into Unit 7. Guys, thanks for sticking with me through a long video today. As always, be well.